In this video, we'll walk you through how to create a draft logic document. This is just a high-level overview to get you started. Don't worry, we'll cover each feature in more detail in upcoming videos. All right, let's get started. First, open the editor. I'll load the document I created earlier to show what we are going to create. Now it's loaded. Draft logic has automatically switched to drafting mode. Drafting mode is where the Word documents are generated. It's not used for editing or creating draft logic files. In this mode, the screen is split horizontally into two sections. The top half is for entering details. The bottom half shows a live preview of the document. You can't edit it, but it updates automatically as information is entered. The example document demonstrates a few helpful automations. The name in the document is auto-capitalized. The document shows two dates, the chosen date and another 2 weeks later. The drop-down has two options, normal rate and extra rate. Normal rate is £10 per hour, where extra rate is 12. There are 2 visits, so the hours entered are multiplied by 2. The selected rate is applied to the total hours and the pay is displayed. Selecting extra rate also adds a few items in the list. Okay, that's the document. If we click the lock icon, we're back in author mode. I could now edit this document, but we want to start from scratch. So let's refresh the browser. Now the editor is reset. We are back to the default author mode. Let's get our bearings. The editor is horizontally split in the same way as in the drafting mode, but the two sections are vertically split in two. The left sides have editable text editors. The right side is where we create controls and data items which we drag and drop on the corresponding left editor. Let's start by creating the skeleton of the document we want to automate. We will use placeholders to indicate where we want controls and dynamic text. Now we have the text laid out. We can move on to adding the data, logic, and user input controls. We will deal with the actual document after. For this, we will be looking at these two tabs, Controls and Data. Controls are used to take input from the user. Data, on the other hand, represents values that aren't directly changed by the user. So let's begin. There are a few values the document needs that we don't ask the user for, and that can't be generated from their input. The first is the rate of £10. The second is the extra rate, which is £2.50. Let's add these data items. Click the plus button to add one. There are 2 types of data items. All but the last item in this list are values we store in the document. The last one is the function. Functions can work with data items, control inputs, and even other functions. When you combine those with logic, it's what really powers dynamic document generation. The advantage of storing things in the Data tab area is that you can reuse the same values multiple times across the document and in other functions. If you ever need to change a value stored there, you only need to update it in one place. Since rate and extra rate are both money values, we'll be creating new money data items. We do this by clicking on the money icon. We need to give it a name we can reference later. Let's call this one rate, and set the value to £10. Now it's created. It shows up in the data list. Let's add the other one. Press the plus button again. Money icon. Add the £2.50, and we will call it extra rate. We can move on to setting up the 4 input controls. Click on the Controls tab. We add controls the same way as data. Use the plus button to create a new control. Here is the list of control types. First, we need to add a control to take the name. We need a text control for that, so click the text icon. Unlike data, we don't assign a value to a control, since it will be entered, but we do need to give it a name so we can find it later. Let's call it, well, name. Once it's created, drag it into place. I'll just go ahead and add a date control, and then a number control which we can use to capture the hours per visit. The final control we are going to add is the dropdown. This gives a list of options to select between. Here we enter the values we wanted to show, and optionally, we can have a different data value for each choice, but we are happy with normal rate and extra rate, so we leave it as it is, and create it and drop it into place. Great, the controls are in. Time to look at functions. Let's go back to the Data tab and see how we can derive new values from the inputs we've just created. Use the plus button. Click on the function icon. Functions will be covered in their own video, but for now, let's walk through how to add the ones we need for this example. At the top, you'll see two tabs, System Functions and Controls/Data. System Functions contains DraftLogic's built-in functions. Controls and Data, on the other hand, lists everything we've been adding to the document. This is a drop zone. It is showing what can be dropped into it. Right now, it's looking for a function. So, let's take a look at those. Here we have a list of function categories. Arithmetic operations is already selected. At the moment, there are only two options: sum integers, which adds two numbers, and multiply integers, which multiplies them. Below that are other groups of functions for different data types, like money, date, and strings. There's also the logical operations group, which allows for comparisons and logic. For example, the select function lets you choose between values. Also, logic operations like if, and, or. For our first function, we want to take the number of hours entered and multiply it by 2. To do this, drag multiply integers into the drop zone. There are now two new drop zones, both expecting numbers. These will take the two values we want to multiply. So let's add the hours control, as this holds the value which is entered into the control. Click the Controls/Data tab. Remember those names we assigned to controls and data? Drag hours into one of the number drop zones. For the other value, we need the number 2. We didn't create this earlier, but since it's only used in this function, we can simply add it into the function. Double-click the empty drop zone. This gives us an input. Enter 2. And don't forget to hit the Submit button to add it. That completes the function. Let's name it hours times 2, so it's clear what it does. And then create it. Now, let's create another function. This time, a date calculation. We want to generate a date that's 2 weeks after the one the user enters. The process is similar to before. Again, click the plus button. Create a function. This time, select Date Calculations. We want to add a number of days to a date, so drag over Add Days. As expected, we can see this function takes a date and a number. Drag the date into the date slot. Double-click on the number dropdown. We want to add 2 weeks to the date, so enter 14 and press Submit. Let's call this one 2 weeks later. Next, we'll create a function that contains some logic. We want to generate the hourly rate. Click on Logical Operations. Select allows us to choose between two values, perfect for selecting which hourly rate we need. Drag over Select. Working from left to right, Select takes a Boolean value. If this value is true, Select uses the second value. If it's false, it uses the third. The second and third values show base type in their drop zones. This just means it will take any type. Let's sort out the two values we want to return first, then add the logic to select between them. The true value we want is the £10 value we called rate. Drop that in. The false value will be rate plus extra rate, which is something we don't have to hand. We could have created it as before as a function and dropped it in, but I'll do it here. We are adding two money values together, so let's open Money Functions. Drop in the Add Money function. Add the rate into one of the drop zones and bonus rate in the other. Now we just need to generate the Boolean. In other words, some logic that decides which of the values we want. For this, we want to use the type's drop-down value. If it's set to normal rate, we want true. Find the drop-down control and drop it into the Boolean drop zone. When a drop-down control is dropped onto a Boolean, it will list all available values it contains and lets us choose the one we are after. Here we want it to equal normal rate. That's it. Name this function selected rate and save it. We can now do the final function. Now we have the selected rate and hours times 2. We can calculate total pay by multiplying them together. This one is simple. Use multiply money. Drag them in. Let's call this final function total pay. With all of our data prepared and functions built, most of the work is done. The next step is to display these results inside the document. Now, our focus moves to below the divider. Let's click on the Display tab. Click on the plus button to add a new one. Here we have the different types of display items available. We are going to use all 3 in this example. Text blocks are multiple pages of text which are swapped in and out depending on the logic assigned to each page. The middle one simply displays values of controls, data, and functions. Runtime numbers are used to keep numbers consistent in documents with dynamic text. We will give an example later. Let's work our way down through the document and add the display items one by one. The first display items we need will be text. Clicking on the text icon, the first task in the document is to display the name. Drag the name to the drop zone. Text display items are given a default name. It's the same as the item it was given to display. We are happy with name, so we will leave it as it is. Under that, it will ask how you would like it to be displayed in the document. As we dropped in a string, it's giving a few options. Feel free to select each one to see an example of what it does. Uppercase will output the string with all caps. We are displaying a name, so we want each word to be capitalized. Let's select Capitalize Words. The control is now created and can be dropped into position like so. The display item we just added is showing undefined. All display items will do this when there is nothing to display. Let's put some content in the controls so we get some nice outputs while we add these display items. In the document, we want the name to show up as bold, so let's highlight the name and click bold. That's better. The next display text is the drop-down selection of type. Create another text item. Drop in type. This time, I won't change the output. Put it in place. Done. Now let's add the date. Note the different date formatting options. I'm going with short date. Next, we will add the date, 2 weeks later. We have already created the function, so we just add it. Moving on to displaying the number of hours. This is a number. Numbers again have different display options. We shall choose decimal. Now we want to display the total payment. We have the total pay function already created. As this is a money amount, we get the option to pre-append the currency. Let's do that. That's all the text display items in. We can demonstrate the text block next by using it to add or hide items in the list. We want normal rate to display only the first and the last item and extra rate to display them all. Let's create it now. The text block needs to have at least one page of text added. Each page will have its own logic. The page logic is evaluated as ordered in the list, until one of the pages returns true, which is the page to be displayed. If no page returns true, it checks to see if the tick box is checked. If it is, it will display the default page. If not, it will not show anything in the draft document. For this dynamic list we want to create, we could have 2 blocks of text, each with their own list, but we want to demonstrate a few things. Let's set the page logic to show the page if the option Extra Rate is selected. Click Add Page. Here is another drop target. It's asking again for a Boolean. More complex pages will want to use the logical operations, but in our case, we just want to check the type's drop-down value. Change to controls/data and drag over the type control. So we want type to equal extra rate. This will trigger this page to be displayed. Let's select those options and press complete. We could now add more pages or tick the box to show a page if no pages are selected, but we don't need this. Let's name the control and create it. We drop it in place. It is showing block disabled and is not editable. This is correct as we asked it not to display anything unless extra rate is selected. Let's change it. We can now edit the page. Move over the 2 list items we want displayed when this page is active. Nice. To see what the document output will now look like, click on the padlock and enter draft mode. Toggle the type dropdown to check it all works. One last thing, the numbering on the list isn't right. The final list item is always number 4. We can fix this by using real-time numbers. Back to author mode and let's create a runtime number display item. Few display options, Roman numerals, numbers, or alphabetical. Let's go with numbers. We want to start the number from 2. Now I'm going to replace the numbers in the list starting from 2. It doesn't matter the order I add these. They increment down the page based on their position in the document. In author mode, these will show up as N, but will show as numbers when we switch to draft mode. Now the dog's welcome list number updates and is complete, but we have not saved it. Let's do one more thing before we do that. Open the final tab, Settings. The document name will be the save file name. Let's call it tutorial. Save the file. You can find this file in the browser download location. It will be called tutorial.draftlogic. With this save file in hand, you can now distribute it like any other file. It can be loaded back into DraftLogic for more editing or draft document generation. Thanks for watching. If you need additional help, visit our website or contact us.